Back in 1962, AgriSupplies started with a simple creed: provide good, solid products at a fair price. Add in stellar customer service and you have the best option. There's 9 locations across North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia, and Georgia, and their robust online ordering makes it easy for anyone in the world to experience the Agri way. Don't hesitate. Go to agrisupply.com to find just the product you're looking for. The Carolina All Out Fence, Fur, and Feathers podcast is brought to you by Carolina All Out Apparel. Shop at our online stores for hats, shirts, koozies, and much more. Carolina All Out Apparel. Express the lifestyle you live.
It's the Carolina All Out Fins, Fur, and Feathers podcast with Chris Douglas, where the conversation covers all things in the NC outdoors pertaining to hunting and fishing. Like and subscribe to get all the hunting and fishing info from the top guides, locals, and conservation agencies. Hear from biologists and professionals in the field about what things matter to you most. From the studios in Lemon Springs, North Carolina, your host, Chris Douglas.
And welcome to the Carolina All Out Fins, Fur, and Feathers podcast, brought to you by our friends at Carolina Cooker. This is the podcast where people who love the outdoors come to find out about the great state of North Carolina and what she has to offer in the hunting and fishing space. I'm your humble host, Chris Douglas, and behind the scenes we have Titus Kasner working that magic. And my guest today is Hannah Plumpton, who is the Upland game bird biologist for the North Carolina Wildlife Resources Commission. And being that the wild turkey is in that list of game birds and that turkey season is right around the corner, we thought we would bring her on and talk a little bit about turkeys this week. So thank you very much for coming in, Hannah. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
So let's get into it right away about who is Hannah. What is where's she from? What did she major in and all that good stuff in her career, and what you're doing now?
All right. So was born in Pennsylvania, South Central, near Harrisburg. And I spent most of my life growing up there and went to college at Penn State University, got a bachelor's degree in wildlife and fishery science there with a minor in forestry.
Okay.
And then I spent the next 4 years kind of doing different seasonal jobs all around the country, trying to work on a new group of birds in a new part of the country. It was fun working, for grad students, helping them with their projects. Private wildlife sanctuaries, universities, the federal government on a national wildlife refuge. And then I went back to school to get my master's degree at Clemson University. And so I got a master's in wildlife and fisheries biology. Mm-hmm. And I did mostly a data analysis project looking at the wintering habitat and movement of black scoters off the Atlantic coast.
Okay, so you did some work with scoters, huh?
Yes, well, I did the nice data work of them, but...
I got you. That's interesting. So there's another podcast we'll have to do because we need to talk about scoters at some point. We have done a show or two with them, and it was a very interesting bird and actually quite beautiful. That bill that those males have, that bright yellow with the orange there against the black feathers is amazing, isn't it?
They're beautiful birds.
Yeah, very beautiful birds. Well, that's the thing I say a lot about birds. People hear me say that about fish as well. The colors and the iridescence that you wouldn't ordinarily see in a bird flying by, but when you get up close to them, the turkey might look brown or black to a lot of people, but man, there is so much color in those feathers.
I know. The light hits them and they just shine.
Like fire. In fact, that one right there that's hanging on the wall right there, I cut that neck out. I call him the firebird because he was just so bright orange when you see it in the sun. It's just amazing how the colors are. So it's so I'm sure that's possibly one of the draws that brought you to turkey or to the game, to birds in essence, I guess.
Yeah, it did. I really love diving into the data and long-term data sets, what you have in the game birds. I also enjoy working with hunters. They're extremely demanding. They care about the birds. So they're like, why are you doing this? What are your reasons? So they're very intense and they care and love the birds so much. So they're judging you. They're asking questions. And it's like, okay, I love that pressure and I love hearing their hunting stories, telling me all about their adventures, the highs, the lows, that one that got away, all those adventures. So I love that. So it all just kind of came together. Turkeys and game birds, we love them. So we've been tracking them for decades. We have long-term data sets, which I love to deal and nerd out in. And then having that pressure and that intensity with hunters on why are we doing this? You're crazy for doing this reason. You should be doing this. And why are we doing this? And I just love that interaction and their passion.
Give me a definition, of a data set and what that is.
So data sets are typically what we call our long-term surveys. They can be as simple as our harvest numbers, our hunters reporting in a harvest. They can be us going out to a same point every year to count or listen for birds. They can be as simple as, creel surveys out of our fishermen. What are you catching? Sort of things. And it's just those that we do the same way or roughly the same way year after year after year.
And that's going to yield a bar graph in some cases, I guess, but it's going to kind of show you a trend in essence, right?
Yeah, it's showing us a trend, whether it's, depending on a year, how many birds we're harvesting over a long period of time, how's that changing from year to year, decade to decade, as little as a reproduction or just even the number of turkeys we're seeing for every hour or 1,000 hours, standardizing it and saying, okay, how is the number of turkeys we saw over 1,000 hours in the 80s changed to the 2020s over that 40 years?
Well, there's probably a lot from the 80s. Being I've lived here all my life, I know there's a difference between the 80s and what we have today, which is quite amazing because I remember a turkey was absolutely a ghost. We didn't even know anything about a turkey back in the 80s. But now here we are, and it's a beloved bird in North Carolina. It's quite well known for turkeys. We've got a great population, and we're going to talk more about that for sure. One question I was thinking, though, being you were close to Harrisburg, did you attend the Great American, the big Harrisburg show we always talk about up there?
Oh, yes. I always went out to the Great Outdoor Show back there at the big farm show complex and everything. I love going there. It's one of my fun times to just see the sheer number of people that descend. It's like, think Dixie Deer Classic, but on steroids.
You bet. That if you've never been to that, if anybody's never been to what we call the Harrisburg show, for people who spend the 10 days, now it's a 10-day show, and I've done it in different capacities, and if I didn't do it again, I'd probably be okay because I had my fill of it, but man, what a show. That place is just loaded with people all the time throughout the days. I mean, it's just on and on and on. It seems like it never ends, but yeah, Pennsylvania, good group of people up there. We love the Pennsylvania sportsmen up there, and maybe someday you might see a Pennsylvania all out. Who knows? You never know. Well, being we found out a little bit about you, Hannah, and the passion it sounds like you have now for it, that you, when it comes down to what you would have to share right here at the very beginning of this whole thing with, we've talked a little bit about data sets and the trends that this information is going on. Just you've probably got some things that you want to get information you want to get out to people, and being we're just before the turkey season. Let's talk about that a little bit and what your thoughts are.
In what way, like turkey season itself, or?
Well, there's a lot of concern out there. A lot of people have about the birds right now. Lots of, I'd say, rumors, lots of information flying around, but also, let's just talk about what is actively going on with research with the turkeys in North Carolina right now that you're involved in.
All right. So we just completed a very large research project, basically knowing everything we could about the turkey itself. We said, okay, it's been 30-some years since we've done a project on turkey. So we really had a lot of questions, timing of our seasons. There's been talks of decline elsewhere across the Southeast. And we really didn't know a lot about these questions and these answers to these questions. And we said, okay, we really need to do a deep dive into it. So we did this massive 4.5 year project looking at wild turkeys on private land, because North Carolina is primarily private. So we really want to know what they're doing all across the state. We had 3 study sites, one in the coast, one in our Piedmont, and one in our mountain region. And we said, okay, talk to us, turkeys. What are you doing? Mm-hmm. When are you nesting? How successful are you at having a successful hatch, raising a brood? How many males are we harvesting? What percentage are we over harvesting? Are we over having a large percentage of our jakes being harvested? Do we need to have special seasons? We really just went and did everything we could ask about them. We tried to delve into. So we finally got the reports and the answers to that the last year or so. So I'm really excited to share all the things we've learned about turkeys here in North Carolina.
Well, just what you listed out there, I've got total interest in all those things. So maybe we need to set aside this time to get into some of those things, because I mean, we are concerned about overharvesting. Are we at a place where we're in the middle of overharvesting, or are we, the nesting, success in nesting and that sort of thing. So, let's get into that a little bit. Let's talk about what. I'm not going to just say what the most important thing is, because I have my opinions, but just talk to me. What did you guys find out? I mean, what are some of the trends or some of the things you found out?
So we learned, first off, with our hunter thing right away, is we are not over harvesting our turkeys, because that's the biggest concern. We harvest, looking at all the regions, and each year we harvest 30% or less, which science tells us we can safely take 30% of the harvest without negatively impacting turkey populations. Mm-hmm. So we're very good on that. We only take about 5% of our jake population, so it's showing us our hunters are automatically selecting for those adult long beards, so we don't need to have any special complicated regulations in relation to jakes. So not over harvesting, no need to have complicated relation with things with that. Another thing that was really interesting that really struck us into seasons and complication was, we have a really wide range, of elevations here and timings, of seasonalities. We go from 0 level sea level to 5,000 feet plus, and different nest or leaf green up. It could be 80 degrees on the coast and still have snow in the mountains.
That's right.
And we found turkeys don't care what the weather is doing. They hit a certain amount of daylight, and that's when they're going to nest. And they nest, didn't matter. Elevation, year, they nested roughly the same time every year within a day or two.
Wow. So photoperiodism, correct?
Yep.
Okay, that is what is dictating the nesting behaviors of the hens. Same thing with the toms, or the toms always ready to go?
Toms are ready to go. They start gobbling. I mean, we can hear them gobbling in December.
Yeah, for sure.
One thing we have to remember with gobbling and all of that's also them coming up with a hierarchy, figuring out, okay, who the dominant birds are and who are going to be doing most of the breeding, basically. Mm-hmm. And they decide that, and they could go through March and stuff, and really March is when they start picking up, because they're starting to get ready. But again, hens dictate when they're breeding. Mm-hmm. We could have, earlier nests, but we find the majority of them, you get a few outliers, but the majority of them are at that same time period, right around the middle of April.
So it's going to be however many hens are in the area around the toms, I guess I guess it would be, that are all going to come in kind of the same time?
Within a few days, we found on average, and again, an average, that hens will start laying their first egg on April 11th.
April 11th. Okay, we've got an actual day.
Yeah.
You said within a day or so of that.
Yep. And like I said, we calculated over 3 years, we had as early as maybe April 9th. They started 1 year to April 14th. But on average, all years, all hens, all regions, averaged out to about April 11th.
So this year, the season comes in the 12th. So we're going to be the first laying is going to go on. Those hens, it's going to be small nests at that point, I guess.
Yep, that'll be, on average, that's when they lay their first egg.
First egg. How about that? Well, what else? This is very fascinating.
Oh, man, we could go into it so much. So let's stick on nesting, because that's another big concern is reproduction. If we look at our trending, our summer observation turkey survey, the survey everyone loves to hate.
Right.
So
seeing how many poults are running around,
yep.
Right?
So with that, we found, we had about a 25% successful nest rate, which means 1 in 4 nests successfully hatched at least 1 egg. Okay. So that's really low. And so what we found were nests that had higher vegetation, higher cover, where the hen could be higher sheltered and thing, had a much higher rate of being successfully hatching versus those who didn't. And who were more exposed and easier to see. And the primary cause was predation.
Right.
Not surprising, they are a prey species. Turkeys aren't dying of old age. So.
Right. I definitely try to make myself remember there's always the coyote relationship with the turkey that everybody has this, and I've traveled quite a bit across the country where turkeys and coyotes have been interacting for many, many years out in Texas and all this stuff. And it's not what I see. It doesn't seem like the coyote's going to make a dent in the population of turkeys. But what surprises people who don't know is whenever I start talking about raccoons and possums and skunks, of course, and all that sort of stuff. And that predation is really where it matters, I think, the most. It seems to be anyway.
Yeah, and then the important thing to remember is, those skunks and possums and raccoons, they're opportunistic. If they're coming across a nest, they're not going to turn it down, but they're not actively searching. So again, that higher protection of vegetation, it shelters, hides the nest, it makes the hen more successful to have that successful nest.
Right. That's beautiful. So we'll get into the habitat part of it later on in the show, but this is really fascinating. Got any more for us?
Okay, so once they have that successful hatch, that 1 in 4 nest hatch, those turkeys have a rough life, those broods. We only have about 1 in 3 broods that'll make it to that 28 days where we're like, okay, you guys are fairly decent size, you got feathers, you can fly, we consider you're mostly going to survive through adulthood. So it's amazing we have turkeys when you go, okay, 1 in 4 nest hatch, and then of those, only 33% reach 28 days old. So it's amazing that we have that, but turkeys are so resilient in that way.
Gosh, that's fascinating. Fascinating to see how they can just fight against all odds and be able to survive and grow, and the populations grow there.
Oh, yeah.
So what else? Anything else of interest that you get questioned about that you guys are finding out more about?
I think another big thing that comes in is the gobbling. When we go out hunting, we all want to hear the gobbles. We want to have that call and back and forth with them. So we found that gobbling is very site-specific. It's very location-wise. And there's really no rhyme or reason to it. We can have one site that they may gobble from, the beginning of March to the end of May. They may gobble 30 times one year. And a place a mile down the road or so, they gobble 300 times. And just because they gobbled 300 times that one year means the next year they may do 30. It is so rhyme or reason sporadic and very localized.
Right.
But we found if we take all of those, and we had over 51 recorders all across the state for, we're going on 8 years or so. We had 8 years worth of data. And we found that just because it varies locally, overall, the majority of turkey gobbling stays strong. Right, it will peak right at or right before turkey season, and then it really stays strong throughout turkey season, and then about middle of May, it really drops off.
So in your studies or what you've read and all the other studies have gone on, we hear the thing about hierarchy. We were talking about that earlier, the hierarchy, and that may be a bird is suppressing other birds from gobbling, or potentially there's coyotes. I've heard that before, that coyotes kind of target the gobbles and that sort of thing. So what are you finding on that?
That one we're really just, gobbling, you're determining a hierarchy. So, you're going to have less gobbles. Jakes aren't going to be gobbling. Some of those lesser dominants, they're not going to gobble. If a guy's like, why are you gobbling in my territory? He's going to go and beat him up. We also know that, when they're gobbling, they're telling all the hens they're there, but they're also telling every predator, here I am, come eat me. So it is a challenge. And, the talkative bird often gets the shot bird.
That's right.
So a lot of times they're going to gobble on the roost. They're going to be saying, okay, I'm gobbling, here I am. They're going to land on the ground, and then they're going to go silent. So that's not saying that they're not there, they're not around. And they may just be feeling it. There's those days where the bird's just like, I'm hot, I'm going to gobble.
Right.
But again, they're very individualized on the bird.
I like them on that day.
Everyone does. They're like, dang it, this is what we want. I'm having this back and forth. I don't care. We find hunters, they don't care so much that they harvest a bird, more as they get to have that chance and that opportunity and that back and forth. That's where they get their juices flowing.
Oh yeah, that's what makes turkey hunting. I mean, I remember, like I said before, where we didn't have turkeys. And first experiences that you have way up in Castle County is where I learned to turkey hunt. And so, hearing that bird gobble, and those birds were pressured beyond measure. So as soon as they would gobble on the roost, as soon as they got to the ground, they were done. So if you weren't close enough to try to, and in the path of which way they were going, you weren't going to be calling them very much at all. But that's turkey hunting for you, right? And so we've got just great opportunities all across the state here. And you guys are finding that. Let me ask this: on the surveys of all three, what were your most active? You said one thing you said about the coast as opposed to the mountains. I can't remember. That was maybe another study I was looking at. But what did you find between the three? Was there any major differences in the way they operated or anything?
No, they were actually pretty consistent across the regions, which was very interesting. I think of them, the most unique thing that we noticed was that hen survival was lowest in the Piedmont versus the other two regions, and that we're like, that's interesting. I'm not quite sure why. Still one of the questions we're delving into or trying to figure out, but it was. You would think it would be on one of the ends or something, but in the middle there, we're like, that's unusual.
Well, that's very interesting. Well, this is a good time for a little break. We're going to cut to the break just real quick, and then we'll be back talking with Hannah Plumpton from the North Carolina Wildlife Resources Commission. And we're talking turkey today. Stay tuned. Keeping up with Carolina All Out is easy. Check us out on Facebook and Instagram. Like and follow to keep up with the All Out crew and our friends with posts, stories, and reels that will inspire you to get outdoors. There's some things in life that just makes you feel good when you see it. And something cooking in an old black cast iron skillet does it for me. There's nothing like it. And if it does it for you, then my friends over at Carolina Cooker have just the equipment you need for outdoor cooking, camping, kitchen accessories, and food processing. Check out carolinacooker.com to order from their huge selection and also find a store near you that carries the brand born in the Carolinas. Carolina Cooker, tools, cooks, legends, you create the tradition. Well, we're back and we're talking about turkeys with Hannah Plumpton of the North Carolina Wildlife Resources Commission. And Hannah has already piqued my interest a number of times talking about all the surveys, all the research that they've been doing on the wild turkey, because y'all know I love turkeys. I know that most people listening to this do too. North Carolina has got a great population of birds, and we're very pleased to be able to hunt them on a regular basis for that 1 month period, more or less, in the spring. So we were talking about, just before the break, we were talking about the surveys, or not the surveys, the research that's been going on. So let's talk a little bit about what was the size of these survey areas and how it all worked.
Yeah, so we really wanted to emphasize private lands and what turkeys are doing on private lands. So we worked with over 250 different landowners. Some of them had, small tracts, some of them had massive tracts. But we did it in the much harder route, when it would have been easier to be on our own property and we don't have to knock on so many doors.
Sure.
Or try and track down, absentee landowners and stuff.
Oh, boy.
But we did that. So we had 3 different, site in each region. They would range from multiple counties to just one county, depending on how many contacts and locations we could get. Mm-hmm. So in our coastal region, we had it in Bladen, Upland, and Sampson County. In our Piedmont region, we had Moore County. So we had all our landowners all in Moore, so that made it a little easier. Mm-hmm. And then in our mountain region, we had McDowell, Mitchell, Yancey counties. So it was all big challenges and working together, but we managed to do that, and it really paid off.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like it. So the trends that you were finding there, did they vary between the different areas?
Not particularly. Most things were consistent. Like I said, nesting, harvest, were all very consistent. The only thing that was unusual we noticed was female survival in the Piedmont was lower than on our coastal or mountain region, which was really unusual.
And you really don't know why?
No, we looked at it and there was no real reason. So when we captured all the birds we tracked, and we captured over 700 birds.
Wow.
We tried to, as long as the birds weren't overly stressed, we basically ran the gamut on them to pull disease samples. So we pulled blood. They got swabbed on both ends. And so we're trying to look at that now as trying to do something really unique. We've always done disease sampling to know prevalence, but since we know the fate of all these birds, we're now diving into I think we looked at 8 different possible diseases and we're pathogens and stuff, and we're wondering, okay, having these effects or a different combination of effects have indirect effects? Are they more likely to be predated or have lower survival rates if they have these diseases? Or are they less likely to be nesting success or lower reproduction rates? Is it changing their behavior in ways that we aren't seeing on a larger scale? So I'm super excited. That's being currently data analyst, and I'm trying not to bug our folks down at the Southeastern Cooperative Disease Study Group, or SQUIDist, which is based out of the University of Georgia.
Okay, so all this information is being sent down to just be processed and brought into something that you can understand, I see.
Yep, we gave them, here's our disease samples, here's all the life history of the same birds. Start doing your data crunching and massive modeling to figure out, is there a connection, is there nothing, is there slight, and trying to answer these things. And some of them are complicated because some have X disease but not Y disease. Some of them have multiple diseases together. Some of them have this internal blood parasite and some don't. So it's really interesting. And I'm just like, okay, try not to bug them. Let them do their data work. Having done it, something that you think is simple may take them like 2 weeks to figure out how to get the computer to do that simple thing.
Right. So question on the diseases and parasites, are those birds... would they be together? I mean, in, say, Moore County, say those birds all in an area, one would have it close that was captured next to the next one? It
depends on what it was. We were getting some that had it in a flock, some weren't. It was very, we noticed, adult birds were more likely to have diseases and parasites than juveniles. So it's very variable. So.
So how long was the survey again? Was the research done, the project?
So we started trapping in January of 2020.
Okay.
So great time to start a giant research project.
Right.
And so we trapped that winter all the way until about 10 days before turkey season, because we used bait to draw them in so we could capture them. So we had to remove all our bait so everyone could be legal.
Right. Thank you.
So we did that in 2020, 2021, and 2022. And then we tracked birds all the way through the summer of 2022. And then we spent 23 versus ended to 24 just researching and answering all these questions.
How about that? Man, and how many birds again did you say you guys trapped?
Over 700 birds.
700 birds, man. I bet you get scratched up a little bit doing that.
I missed all the fun.
Oh, you didn't get to play that part of that.
No, I came in right as they were wrapping up, and so I got the data analysis part, but I didn't get the fun part where everyone got to go out and spend 10 hours sitting in the cold hoping a turkey goes right where they're supposed to go for those 10 minutes of fun. Right.
Yeah, I wish we could have gotten some video of that. That would have been so much fun. We maybe you'll enact another study and we can be really tight on that one, because we'd love to show that research and how it all goes down, because it's really, really quite fascinating. So in the research, now let's move over to surveys. I've been kind of putting those together, but I know they're separate. So the surveys are what you are asking people on the ground, the hunter, us, and our partnership that we have with the Wildlife Resources Commission. So talk to me about the surveys and what they were asking and how the answers were going with that.
Yeah, so our surveys are what we have are basically annual check-ins. Basically, we ask what the turkey population is doing, whether it's how's our harvest doing and hunter effort, how our reproduction is in the summertime, how many turkeys are we seeing in the fall, and basically just tracking them through the years. Is it greatly increasing? Are they decreasing? And those are kind of our, canary in the coal mine sort of thing. If they start doing things we don't want, we need to be like, okay, we need to be a little bit more restrictive. Do we need to make changes? What are we doing here? What's happening? And how can we lessen it so we have turkeys, for the next 200 years?
Mm-hmm. I love it. Love it. I wanted to see those things around for as long as I possibly can, and then hopefully my grandkids and offspring on beyond are able to partake in a turkey hunt, because it is just a great thing. So what do you find? We talked about the survey that everyone loves to hate there, which is the poults. How many poults they're seeing and that sort of thing. What is that, and why is it that people have such an issue with it? Or
so it is our summer wild turkey observation survey. Mm-hmm. So what it is anyone who can participate. We have a lot of the general public doing it. They basically tell us every turkey they see from July 1 through August 31st. And so with that, we track what we call our poults per hen number. And that is basically, short and dirty, is the number of poults we saw divided by the total number of hens we saw. Mm-hmm. And so people love to hate that because it's never what they want it to be. And so when we first didn't have a lot of turkeys on the landscape, we had a lot higher poults per hen. So we started this in the late 1980s. Mm-hmm. And so we were getting, 4 poults per hen. And now we've averaged for the last 10 years about 1.5 poults per hen. Mm. So it's been dramatically declining, so everyone's very concerned. Reproduction is down, but it's like, okay. But over that same time period, turkey numbers have increased tenfold here in North Carolina.
Right.
So part of that is available resources for turkeys. Mm-hmm. We said, they had to have good nesting cover, good brooding cover from our ecology project to be successful in nesting.
Right.
So if we have only 100 good spots for turkeys to nest, and so we have 50 hens nesting in those spots, mm-hmm. and good places for their broods, well, there's all these resources that are really good chance of success rate, really good, high poults, few turkeys. But if we have 200 turkeys and we still only have that 100 good spaces, well, then you're having nesting in these subpar nesting locations where they're highly exposed, more likely to be predated, less good spots for the broods. Again, poults are perfect snack size for predators, so you see a lot more turkeys with little to no broods. And even those that are in those good spots, they still have high numbers, but there's a lot more hens on the landscape. Mm-hmm. So that causes that lower decline and that lower poults per hen number. Make sense?
Yeah. Now, in a perfect scenario for a population to grow, what is the percentage of survival that needs to happen?
So historical research has said 2 poults per hen on an annual basis.
Okay. That's growth.
That's just holding steady. You replaced your parents. I'm not sure. I'm not sure I agree with that number. Mm-hmm. We've had a 10-year average at 1.5, and we're still growing. But then again, that could also be the data I'm getting. Right. Because again, I can only get through what the data says. And if people are seeing their turkeys in their backyards or on roadsides, and it's just adults, or they're not seeing poults, where they saw poults, but they're almost as big as the hens, so they can't tell the difference. Right. Yeah. So, I can only do what it is. So it's probably a little bit of an underestimation, but it's also one of those where, we put a lot of stock. It's not 2 poults per hen. And it's like, okay. but we're still increasing. So maybe we don't need to put so much emphasis on that number.
So with those surveys coming from actual people visualizing and seeing, is there anything like thermal or any kind of surveys going on like that?
No, that's so hard. Again, to get the data, and we have one of the highest participating ones in the country. Everybody
That's
in the
good.
country pretty much does the same way. All of us turkey biologists got in a room for years and argued and said, okay, we're all going to do it the same way. So what they're doing in Pennsylvania is the same as Missouri and down to Texas and Mississippi and stuff.
Right.
And so we have really great participation. I think only Pennsylvania and Missouri have higher participation rates than us. So we're really confident on our numbers because we have so many people said it.
Right.
We have like 7,000 participants in observations each year. So
That's great. Thank you, North Carolina. Thank
yes.
you for
So thank you to everybody who participates in that. And if you don't, please sign up.
right. Well, that's what I say about the partnership that we have between one another. You guys are making the science-based decisions, and we're following and make the rules from that, of course. And then we follow the rules, and now we have turkeys and fish and deer and bear and everything else for years to come. And so it's that is our partnership that we have with one another. And so it's very, very interesting to see what surveys are bringing to the table, and that you guys are actually able to use that information to help us when it comes to bringing on the turkey population and protecting it and making it better all the way around. Let's just go ahead and get into habitat. We've got some time here. We were talking about that before we actually started to show up on habitat. And so let's talk about it. This, right from the beginning, what a turkey needs. And is that part of the reason why the success is so great in North Carolina? Because we have that kind of habitat.
Yeah, and that's also kind of the big insight we got from our turkey ecology project was habitat, particularly our nesting and brooding habitat. It's really limited on the landscape, and that's really what's stopping our turkey population, and that's what's got the limiting factor. I think Tennessee's done research, there's only 7% of good nesting and brooding habitat on the entire Tennessee on their study site. So, and I like to tell people good nesting and brooding habitat is great quail habitats. And we all know what our quail populations have been doing across the Southeast.
Right. Yeah.
So turkeys are thankfully not nearly as fussy as quail, but they are nesting in subpar locations. So again, areas where there's a lot of shrubby, brushy cover, areas in your stands where there's a lot of sunlight hitting the ground. That's the big thing, is the lack of sunlight. You want a lot of growth, having it, 2 feet tall. You got your blackberry brambles and just shrubs and areas that are a little tough to move through. A hen can sit on her nest, be protected. Nobody can easily see her, and she can look for predators because that's her most vulnerable time period, is sitting on that nest. Particularly at night when she'd rather be in a tree, she's sitting there incubating her eggs.
Okay, so you mentioned some. What about a cutover?
Cutovers are great.
Okay.
I done projects where I was helping grad student down in Georgia. They loved cutovers and slash piles. I had hens nest in those things, and I'm like, oh, please let there be no snakes while I'm trying to dig and find this nest.
Right. So she doesn't necessarily need to have the over top open, because she can kind of work her way out real quick if a predator gets after her. Because we've always thought about it. They need to be able to fly, but fly pretty quickly. So what is that? Is that true?
Yeah. For her, a hen is she fights that battle. She's either going to reproduce or, survive herself. It's a battle. A good mom sitting on her nest more time means that has a better chance of the nest surviving, but she's also more likely to be predated because she's worn down and not taking care of herself.
Right.
So that's a balance you're making. For the hen, they don't need something protecting them directly over. If you got enough cover, they can do it. But a lot of their people who are going after them in their nests, they're on the ground.
Right. Okay. Well, it's always interesting because I mean, I've run across nests through the years, and wasn't really sure why they were there, in that particular place. It seemed a little odd sometimes.
Yeah, and that's the big debate. We don't know, depending on who you ask, and even some of our big turkey researchers, some of them think they go out and they spend a few weeks scouting and they're looking for it, and others like, it's time to lay an egg, here we are.
Yeah.
And so we don't really know we can't ask the turkey themselves. They can only answer us so much, but the whys and the philosophy, or the reasoning in their heads of why they chose a spot, we can't tell.
Yeah, you don't know. That's very interesting. Oh man, I had something I was going to ask you, and it kind of flew as a turkey would away from my mind there. So maybe I'll come back to it here in a minute. But that's the hens. Now, one thing I did learn some years ago, and it's just super fascinating, that the hen lays an egg. She's got 28 days. Is that she could lay inside of?
She lays about an egg a day or every other day until she hits her full clutch, which is about 10 to 15 eggs, and then she'll sit on her nest for 28 days.
And she'll sit, right, she sits for 28 days, but so 15 days from the first one to the last one before she sits, correct?
No, she starts as soon as they're all laid, then she starts incubating them.
Right, so in other words, the first one was laid on the 11th, and the last one was laid 15 days later, right?
Yes.
So whenever they all hatch at the same time.
Yes.
Which is fascinating to me because that egg is 15 days older. The first one is 15 days older than the last one, the last one that she laid. So when she sits down, activation starts.
Yes.
And then they all come out together, which is great, which is part of survival. They've got to do that. She couldn't have them just coming out one every 15 days.
No, it's not like our eagles on those eagle cams where you have one hatch and then another one hatches a few years, because they lay an egg and start incubating and lay a second one.
Right.
Turkeys will wait and get them all because, again, they're snack size, so they hatch. They're like chickens, eyes open, fluffy down. Within an hour, they're walking and leaving the nest.
Well, they got to do that. They're on the ground, man. They're in a really precarious situation.
Yeah, we find through research with broods, once they get that 10, 14 days and they can start flying up those short distances up into the trees at night, their survival goes way up.
Oh, yeah, I got it. Now, when we're talking about habitat, let's talk a little bit about predation and how might possibly be able to enhance that. We talked a little bit before we started the show there.
Yeah, so, turkeys are not dying of old age. They're a prey species, so predation is not shocking. Having them nest destruction or cause of nest failure being so large due to predation, not surprising. So what we find is those who nest in subpar habitats or less quality are more likely to be predated. So the more options a hen has, the more places she has to nest, the better quality, the more nests that have a better chance of survival, which will increase nesting success rates and brood survival because they're not forced to go long distances to find food or, nest and be like, well, this is the best spot, but I'm sitting next to a log and there's nothing else here.
Talk to me, or let everyone know what the general predators, the typical predators, and is there any one, the special, some we wouldn't even imagine?
So everything eats a turkey. So the moment an egg lays, you have your nest predators. We have our standard ones, the raccoons, possums, skunks. Snakes are a big one as well. Armadillos, as they come into the state, are not going to turn down an egg either. Poult size, those same predators will take them out as well. We get, foxes will take them. Coyotes aren't going to turn them down again. Snack size, perfectly good food. Again, a snake will eat it too if they can catch them. That's where we start getting our birds of prey going. Oh, I also forgot. Crows are a big...
Crows
are for those eggs as well, so... Our corvids and stuff. So.
Yeah. I love the crows. Crows are very, very smart bird.
They are.
Extremely smart.
But again, they're going to find a nest. They're like, free egg.
Right.
So, and then, poults, everything eats them as well. So they work their way up. And then in adults, once they're adult size, they're a little bit, their prey goes down or what eats them, predators. So, will have your coyotes, your great horned owls, your bobcats will do it. But honestly, the largest predator is us humans. We could account for over 50% of male mortality.
Male mortality. Okay, got it. Right. That makes sense. Well, look, while this thing is making sense, hopefully it's making sense to everyone out there listening. We're talking with Hannah Plumpton of the North Carolina Wildlife Resources Commission, and she's talking turkey to us. And man, I'm just finding all sorts of interesting things about it, and I hope you are too. We're going to break, and we'll be back after these messages. Hey, make sure you watch Carolina All Out on our YouTube channel and catch us on a live TV Mondays, Wednesdays, and Saturdays. And coming this summer, we'll be airing nationally on the Pursuit channel 4 times a week, spreading the good news to all who will listen about our great state and what she has to offer. At some point in your life, I'm betting you have probably thrown a piece of bait on a hook into one of our great state's 7 amazing sounds. If you have, you know how magical they are. Well, that magic is under threat and has been for a long time. That's where the North Carolina Marine and Estuary Foundation comes in, an organization dedicated to improving management practices, educating the public, and developing practical solutions. They want to see North Carolina become the premier fishing destination in the country. And I do too. Visit ncmeffoundation.org to learn more about this wonderful organization and how you can do your part in protecting the 7 jewels of North Carolina and a whole lot more. And we're back on the Carolina All Out Fins, Fur, and Feathers podcast. Say that fast. I almost get caught up every time I do say that there. But we're here with Hannah Plumpton. And Hannah has been talking to us about fascinating information about our wild turkey population here in North Carolina. And when we went to the break, we were actually talking about predators. And so we want to get into a little bit about what you can do as a hunter to help your population or help the landscape where these turkey are living. So let's get into that. And, I guess it's going to be partially, let's talk about trapping. Let's go ahead and go right straight to trapping there and what, and does it help? And what, would you encourage and how that would go?
Yeah, so that's a big question with trapping. And, I hear from people, the agency's anti-trapping, and we're not. We're very pro-trapping. We have 5 months of trapping in this state, one of the more liberal trapping seasons compared. So from October all the way to the end of February, go out there, have at it. I encourage it. What I do say is trapping can't be your only thing. Mm-hmm. So trapping by itself can maybe help on a small scale, on a very localized scale. Mm-hmm. But it's a war of attrition there. If you're doing it, you have to do it every year because the moment you stop, it doesn't change. It looks like you've never trapped before.
Right.
So
because they backfill.
Yep.
Okay.
So trapping, please do that. But trapping works best with good habitat. And if you do the work on your habitat, it really makes a difference there. So we put so much emphasis on habitat as a state agency because people tend to skip that and do the trapping where they can see it and have that reward of, hey, I removed 3 raccoons, pat myself on the back, I made a difference. And It's like, well, you didn't do any habitat work, so you didn't quite make a difference there. Mm-hmm. So there is no straight line between trapping and turkey reproduction or success in that way.
And when we're talking about habitat here, it's predominantly the nesting habitat?
Nesting and brooding stuff.
And brooding.
So a lot of ways I say it is, pollinator plantings. We were talking off air about that. That is great brood habitats. Mm-hmm. It's got openings. They can walk around. They've got all those flowers. So there's tons of insects. Poults are almost primarily insectivores, so they eat are insects. They're doing a whole lot of growing, so they need that high protein diet that insects are. Mm-hmm. So that's super important for them. They're also great places to nest. They're so thick and high. So plant for pollinators, plant for insects.
Hand in hand.
Yes. It's funny how they all go. Those declines in all those grassland species, they're great for quail. Mm-hmm. My heart is always in that Bob White whistle. So.
Oh, my goodness, yeah.
But, yeah.
Such a rare occasion now.
I know, but they make you smile.
Yeah, they do.
But again, that helps insects and our monarchs, and also helps quail and other grassland species that are so declining. And our turkeys love them for nesting and brooding.
So whenever it comes to, now does a turkey, put it this way, okay, let's talk about farming for just a little bit. Right now we've got a lot of winter wheat that's coming up.
Yeah.
Now, in certain years when it's up, and it looks like it's going to hit the turkey season about right, it's just, the way I see it, it's in the morning time, it is sopping wet, it's over their head, it is so thick they can barely go through it. And I watch birds completely fly over top of fields to get to the outer edges and that sort of thing. And that has had an effect on our hunting over the years. Is that what everybody finds out? Around and is it true? Do they mind getting in that kind of stuff? Because I don't see them in it, but maybe it's because I can't see them in it. I
think they'll go to it, maybe not as much in the dew when they're in strutting mode and season mode, but that's great cover in wintertime. That's the only thing that's standing and that has green and protection over wintertime other than the briar thickets. So
right.
That's often a great source. There's food if people want to do food plots as well. That's a great one. You have clover in there as well. It's also a great mix. So,
and they do like dandelions, don't they?
They love dandelions,
yeah.
And they're not fussy with their food. So if you give them a wide option of flowers and berries and seeds, they'll love it.
Mm-hmm. Now we typically cut the crop on a turkey every time just to kind of see what's going on, kind of after the fact. And I have just seen them absolutely just stuffed full of dandelions. And I was like, well, I do dandelion tea in the evening sometimes, and it's supposed to be really good for you. So I imagine it's fantastic for them. What's in a dandelion that makes it?
It's got some new sort of nutritional thing. We don't do too much. We're not quite like deer in understanding all the forage and the nutrition on that. Just that, not with turkeys. That's not been a big interest on us because they'll just eat everything.
Gotcha.
So, they're coming across it and they're saying, hey, there's a lot of dandelions. Let's eat these. This summer in parts of North Carolina, we had, that cicada hatch. I was having people send me pictures of crops full of them as well. So if they're having a boom year and there's a lot available, they're going to take advantage of it.
What would be a perfect piece of property for turkey?
So a perfect piece of property is a mix of combinations. So, you have open woodlands, particularly hardwoods. You could have pines mixed in for some of those warm or colder nights for some thermal cover. It's also thicker in the wintertime. Protection from, owls seeing them at night on the tree. But also a mixture on the ground. It's really got to have some openings. They got to have thick brushy areas, open fields for them to nest and brood in. If you had a mixture of different habitat types all mixed together within, 1 square mile of you or your property, you're doing really good.
And you see that reflected in the numbers of turkeys whenever you find, like, say, the Moore County property, because that's so close to us. I don't know exactly where it was, but Moore County's the next county over for us. Was there that mix there? Did you see that over those properties?
Yeah, there was a mix. There's, farmlands, pasture lands there. There's often, pine plantations and hardwood bottoms and stuff. So there's a good mix there. It all depends on everyone's wants and goals of a property. If you're maximizing financial gain and production, it's not quite the greatest for wildlife, but if you're willing to give up a little bit of that, maybe plant a little wider on your tree plantings in your pine plantation, allow it to thin a little sooner, run a little bit of fire, open it up a little bit more. It's great.
What does the hardwoods offer to the turkey?
So hardwoods, the typical thing we say is hard mass come wintertime as well. They're often big trees. It's great for them to nest, particularly, roost in.
Right, to roost.
Great places to roost in the summertime or in the fall and winter time. Once it gets a little leaf fall down, they're a little bit more exposed, so they may prefer a little bit more of that pine, but those are great. They're often good places especially in the bottomlands, they're often a little wet and moist, so it's cooler for the broods to go down. And often, buggy down there, so the bugs are out there. So there can be great brooding areas as well.
They like scratching there too in those leaves and the leaf litter there.
Yep, looking for bugs, seeds, grubs in there. The moisture gives it a new aspect to it.
Right. Well, that's very cool. I think I've found it that I thought that turkey had to have a certain habitat, and was so surprised in my travels that they don't have to have as much as you think they have to have. They can. I mean, I've seen them operate solely in a cutover.
Yeah, and it's something we learned when we started restoring turkeys in the late 70s. We thought they needed large tracts of forest because that's all where we could see them, were in those areas. And as we've spent more time and they've recovered, and we've, went from our very liberal fall seasons to our conservative spring season and harvest, we've really noticed that turkeys are a lot more, I guess, opportunistic. They like a wide variety. They don't like just those deep forests. They were there because that's all they had available.
Right. And like you said, where you could visibly see them a lot easier. So yeah, that would make sense to me for sure. So let's talk about tangible ways that you could contribute to the turkey. Let's talk about how you can help the population, even if you're not a hunter. Through the surveys, whatever else it might be there.
Yeah, so the best way people can always help is help with our surveys. If they're a hunter, reporting their harvest is very important to us. We know everyone doesn't do it, mostly because they thought they did and they forgot, or, hey, I did it, and it's not intentional.
Right.
So that's a big way. We help track that way. And we monitor hunter effort, how much time did they spend getting that turkey? Did it take them, on average, we spend about 15 days in the woods for every turkey harvested. So if they're spending twice as much time for the same number of turkeys, that gives us a warning. Turkey populations might be going down. They're spending more effort for it. Another way, like I said, we talked about our summer wild turkey observation survey. That's open to everyone. So general public, people looking out their backyards, going on hikes, bird watchers, our hunters, anyone, please just sign up for that on our website and look for them. We love that.
Right.
And then in our fall, we really love our deer hunters to help us as well. We have our deer hunter observation survey. So when our deer hunters are sitting in their stands, they may be out there 5, 6, 10 hours.
That's right.
It can be a little boring if there's no deer coming by. So we ask them to count various species that they're seeing over their hours. And that tracks us, we see, we're seeing X number of turkeys over 1,000 hours. And that's a good way to track our fall populations over time as well.
Right.
So now we're getting all these different surveys throughout the year from different sources. And when they start telling us all the same thing, that gives us a really big confidence that that's really happening on the landscape.
Right.
So we know and we can be really confident in our management decisions. So when they start contradicting each other, we're like, whoa, hold on. What's going on here? We're not really quite sure. We don't want to make any big changes until we really know what's going on.
So big PSA here from someone who started back many years ago and not being the most studious about reporting game. It's very important. It's very important to do. And in fact, I kind of actually like it now that everything's online, that I actually get to see a little bit of my history of birds and deer that I've taken over the years. And I really like that. So I encourage, again, we encourage you here to always report your game because it comes in very handy for surveys and for keeping these populations going.
Yep, that's one of the main reasons how we monitor our populations at different parts of the state, and it definitely plays into effect on our management decisions on season changes.
That's fantastic, fantastic. Looking into this, I got so caught up in what you were saying there. It's like I try to have the next question going so we can keep this thing happening here. Let's just talk quickly about the limits and the seasons and the dates and why they are where they are and when they are. And, people have a lot of opinions about those sort of things,
They
don't want us to kill a bird because
So we recently made a slight tweak to our turkey season. So I like to say we didn't do anything radical. We just tweaked it. So historically, turkey season you started the first Saturday in April, went a week, and then regular spring season came in the second Saturday. So we have tweaked it, so now it'll go into effect. Spring season will go into effect the Saturday on or after April 11th, that important first laying date for hens. And then spring season will go in the weekend before, and it'll just be the 2-day weekend hunt.
Okay.
So it'll go into effect. It only affects 3 out of 7 years.
Right.
So the reason why we did that was, we were using people's harvest numbers. Turkey harvest is very front-loaded. Most of the harvest occurs within the first 2 weeks. So between youth and the first 2 weeks of the season, we were having 70% of the harvest of that year occurring. So if, the season came in before that April 11th date, we were seeing upwards of 30% of the harvest occurring before they laid their first egg.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I get it.
So if we bump it afterwards, and it's just youth season, we're getting 5% of the total harvest occurring. So that's really what it was. We wanted to say, look, if we make this minor tweak, we really just stay out of their breeding level. Because we weren't sure, we're harvesting birds when they're with hens. Is that screwing with the hens and their breeding? How are we messing with them? Are they having a male and we take out that male and now they have to reassess birds? We weren't really sure. And we're like, we really want to just take a very cautious approach to this and just have it slightly delayed. And we felt, 3 out of 7 years, we'll just start a weekend later. The season length stays the same. The limits stay the same. That's the only little tweak we made to it.
Gotcha. So talk to me about what the disruption, have you found, is any of his studies shown any disruption whenever you take a tom out that's, say he's the dominant bird?
That is the hardest question to know because, we're not sure what the turkeys are thinking and what they're cueing into. And so we don't really know for sure. And so it's such a hard question to answer.
Right.
So we just really took a cautious approach. We really wanted to emphasize, the hunt and the quality of the hunt versus how many birds we take out. So that's why we really just wanted to tweak it and say, look, that's just a lot of birds we're harvesting before they lay a first egg. If we tweak it just a little bit, we can really knock that down.
So in the breeding process, so, we just talked about the disruption potentially there, but it seems to me like there's always, you take a bird and everybody seems to be back in business again the next day. I mean, I'm seeing as quickly as that, it seems the disruption there, it seems to be.
Yeah, and that's the question we don't know is, do they just take the next bird? Is he ready to go right away? Is he got, one of the questions is, is the dominant birds, are they the only ones producing enough sperm to be viable?
Right. Right.
Are they not? How long does it take for the sperm to be viable? Are they all viable and they're just being suppressed through? Is it, they're moving along, but it's all these birds just taking a free fall, taking advantage of a hen because that dominant bird isn't beating them up anymore? So that's a big question on animal behavior that's really hard to track with just a few, that you got to have somebody out there sitting there with them individually named with wing tags that you can individually identify and track them. And I think only 1 or 2 studies have done that before. It's so labor intensive and so time consuming, and it has to be on like a small area.
I see. In the breeding process, what have they ever figured out what the beard is for?
Not to my knowledge.
Do you suspect?
Something they're keying in on, same thing with the heads, and them going, something cues them into it. Now, we'll have males that don't develop a beard for some reason, and we'll have multiple beards, so I'm not quite sure why they do it. So I'm not quite sure why they're iridescent and not bright red, so. True,
yeah. And the head change. let's just talk about that. It's not in our list, but it's just things that are popping up in my head here now because, people need to know or maybe have an interest in, we're hearing it from a biologist, so why not? So what is the purpose of the color change and, what do those colors mean? And
those are questions I don't know the answer to. My assumption is that the head change, it's like breeding plumage. They're going in, they're saying I'm breeding receptive, they're attracting hens to that colors and that color scheme. Now, we know turkeys have excellent vision, way better than us humans. I wish I could see as well as they could.
Yeah, me too.
And so and they also don't see just in normal color range. They see UV, brighter, wider ranges. So something about it, whether it's a cue to their health or something about it is cueing in. And that's some of the questions we have such trouble is, well, we think this is good nesting cover. We think this is a good male based off of what we can choose, but whether that's what the turkey is cueing in on is a different thing.
When you did the surveys, you did weigh each bird. Is that right?
We didn't actually weigh the birds.
Okay.
We were trying to make it as quickly as possible. So we took a couple of measurements on them. We took spur length, beard length, a quick thing, but we actually didn't weigh them. That was one of the things we didn't consider.
Right. So the reason I asked that is I don't. How does the North Carolina bird or tom weigh in comparison to, say, a Midwest bird or something like that?
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
We say here, they average about 20 pounds. Males and hens are about half that weight.
Right. Well, this is very fascinating. And just to see what is it called when they can change color? Their skin can change color?
Ooh. Put me on the spot.
I'm stumping a biologist. Hot dog. Yeah, I can't remember it either.
No.
Is it different from like an octopus or something like that, or is it similar to that?
Octopus can change theirs at will, so I believe that is different. I think theirs is just part of the breeding cycle, so it just naturally occurs.
Got it. Well, it's nothing like seeing them. You see them, just be a blood red head, and then all of a sudden, you see white, and just an amazing bird. I call it the classiest bird in the woods.
Plenty of people agree with you and plenty of people argue against you. So I think they're amazing, especially if you get the sunlight just right on those males.
Yeah, that's what we talk about. That iridescence that you just can't explain, and I can only imagine what they see with their spectrum of color that they can see there. It's amazing there. We've heard it in the news. We've seen it. We've seen the arguments out there on social media. Is the wild turkey in trouble?
In North Carolina, no. Based off of all of our surveys and stuff, they are stable to steadily increasing. Now, that's not saying everywhere. Statewide, very broad stroke. They are stable to increasing. On the coast, they're mostly increasing. We've looked at harvest numbers. They've doubled their harvest in the last 10 years. They've gone from 6,000 birds annually to 12,000 birds. Now, some of our surveys in the Piedmont and mountains will show that they're steady, maybe slightly declining. Again, big broad strokes. That's not to say somebody's local area. They could be declining. Even if the habitat hasn't changed over the last 10 years and your turkey population has changed, well, those trees got 10 years older. So habitat is always changing. And without knowing it, I can't tell you why. I can say that there's no big disease outbreak that's causing it. It's avian bird flu isn't really having a big impact on turkey populations, if at all. So it's really mostly habitat driven. And so I just encourage people to keep habitat out. If they have questions, we have staff on. We have staff at the agency who that's their job is to come out and help you reach your wildlife goals and help you discuss what your plans are and what you're interested in, how to accomplish it.
Good. That sounds very encouraging for me. Now, can you speak to anything that's going on nationally?
So nationally, turkeys, we restored turkeys. They were down to very few. So we went into what we call trap and transfer. So we captured wild turkey populations and moved them to a different part of the state, different states, even in some cases. and said, okay, here's really good habitat, but there's no turkeys. So we put it out them. They got themselves settled. They said, oh, look at all these resources, and they really started to increase. Natural biology is what we thought we were seeing is, we restored all these turkeys roughly the same time period across the Southeast. So they increased, they went past carrying capacity, past the amount that nature can support. Mm-hmm. And then in some cases, they've declined at a lower level and have stabilized right around carrying capacity. And in some areas, they've continued to decline past that. There are different reasons for that. Rapid changes in habitat, or at times, they were over-harvesting birds. When they were increasing, a lot of state agencies took advantage of that increasing harvest, and they increased season lengths and bag lengths. Appropriately, there were plenty of birds, they can adjust and support it. Mm-hmm. And then when the decline started and the population started to decline, they appropriately adjusted to the population, decreasing population length, decreasing bag limits, and such. North Carolina, we've always kept that conservative season. We've always focused on a qualitative hunt versus the quantitative, the number of birds we could hunt,
right,
harvest. Mm-hmm. Now that's saying, could we have taken thousands and thousands of birds much sooner? Yeah. We probably left birds on the table that we could have safely harvested. Mm-hmm. But we chose to focus on hearing more birds and having that opportunity. And they took advantage of it. So now they're just adjusting their season to match turkey populations appropriately.
Well, I know there's a lot of people who've been concerned about it, and that causes the rumor mill, and that causes all the conspiracies that's going on. And
I like to tell people, if people are telling you the sky is falling with turkeys, they're selling you something. There's no need to panic.
Right.
Right here in North Carolina, we've had our last two greatest years, two highest harvest records. We've had the top 5 in the last 5 or 6 years. We just keep going up and up. I expect that to stabilize in the next few years. I'm hoping so. Mm-hmm. The coast has pretty much filled out. So since they were the last place we restored about 25 years ago, they should be filled out. We are hopefully stabling out there. So
it's very, very, very interesting. I keep saying that. Everything you're telling me, I'm like, man, I didn't know, or yes, that's confirming what I was thinking. And that's the whole reason why we're doing this podcast today. We're going to go to break, but we're going to wrap the show up here in just a little bit and do a few cleanup questions and whatnot about the turkeys here in North Carolina. We're here with Hannah Plumpton of the North Carolina Wildlife Resources Commission, biologist and quite smart, and can get those answers out there as quick as we can ask them. Stay tuned.
When I was a kid growing up on the farm in little old Lee County, periodically and usually in the fall after selling tobacco or in the early spring when it was time to start breaking ground, my family would make a trip to what seemed like a faraway place called AgriSupply. AgriSupply had everything we needed to keep the farm running, but it's so much more. From repairing trailers to parts for discs and plows, to livestock feed, to lawn and garden, to all that beautiful cast iron cookware. That tradition is still going on, but AgriSupply is now in 9 locations across the Southeast. If you haven't been to an AgriSupply store before, just go. You don't have to have a farm or a fleet of trucks to go in. The public is welcome. I guarantee you'll find something you need. And if you don't need it, I bet you'll want it. AgriSupply, it's what's inside. At some point in your life, I'm betting you have probably thrown a piece of bait on a hook into one of our great state's 7 amazing sounds. If you have, you know how magical they are. Well, that magic is under threat and has been for a long time. That's where the North Carolina Marine and Estuary Foundation comes in, an organization dedicated to improving management practices, educating the public, and developing practical solutions. They want to see North Carolina become the premier fishing destination in the country. And I do too. Visit ncmeffoundation.org to learn more about this wonderful organization and how you can do your part in protecting the 7 jewels of North Carolina and a whole lot more.
And we're rolling back into the Fins, Fur, and Feathers podcast here at the Lemon Spring Studios, and we are with Hannah Plumpton of the North Carolina Wildlife Resources Commission, a biologist for the Upland game birds. And she has been telling us some fascinating stuff that I'm just loving every minute of, and I kind of nerd out on things like that when it comes to those things because it doesn't have exactly a direct relation to how I'm taking my birds because I love to hunt them. But there's some really neat stuff we were just talking about on camera that I want to bring up to everyone there. And so, we'll go into what the state of the union is for, or I should say the state of the turkey for North Carolina and what the future holds. But we were talking about information that potential, or this is in stone. There's going to be a survey that's going to come up at the end of this turkey season. Is that correct?
Yes. So I am working with our social scientist and the agency. We did this big turkey ecology project where we asked the turkey everything. Mm-hmm. We wanted to know everything about the turkey. Well, now it's time to do the other half of the equation and talk to our turkey hunters. Mm-hmm. So we are sending out a massive, in-depth survey question. I think I had like 75 questions, whether we have that many at the end.
Right.
But possible questions, we're still working that out, to ask the turkey hunter all about them.
Okay.
This is, how did your hunting season go? How many birds did you hear? What do you think is a good hunt? Mm-hmm. Were you interrupted? What's your ideal hunt? What are your motivations? What are your techniques? This is just a really deep dive into the turkey hunter themselves. Mm-hmm. We hear a lot of things of, oh man, red dots and decoys and TSS and heavy shot, they're just changing the landscape.
Right.
And everyone's using them, and it's like, well, is everyone using them? Or how often are they using them? Mm-hmm. How far are they harvesting their birds? Are they shooting birds and successfully harvesting bird at 60-plus yards? Or are they still getting them at that 30-yard range?
Right.
How far are they traveling? Do they hunt turkeys every year and all the season? Or are they just an opportunistic every other year? Are they traveling out of state and they're harvesting multiple birds out there and they're just turkey killers and harvesting birds from multiple states? Mm-hmm. Or there's somebody who, like, I hunt on my back 40, and if I get lucky, I get a turkey come on it, and I harvest it.
Now, what are these questions are going to help you understand the nature of the turkey hunter and how that will impact turkeys later on? Yeah,
this is it, to really truly understand the turkey hunter and possibly rules that our commissioners could change in the future. We have a couple of, what do you like our regulations? Do you like how we communicate with you? What sort of temperature thing, if we did have to make rule changes, what sort of things would you tolerate? Could you tolerate us shortening the season? Could you tolerate lowering the bag limit? Could you tolerate different things? Mm-hmm. So this is really us truly trying to know the turkey hunter and all about them. Mm-hmm. Just like we learned everything we could about the turkey itself, we really want to know everything about our turkey hunter so we can best approach and manage them to find that balance, because it's just not always about the turkey. It is about our hunters who take pride and pleasure and spend their hard-earned money going out and chasing these challenging birds.
Mm-hmm. That's for sure. We talked a little bit about decoys.
Yes.
And that's going to be one of the questions on there. Yes. What about reaping?
I think I asked in there was whether they did it or not, whether that's an option. Whether somebody does it personally or not, the agency is always like, from a safety standpoint, we don't recommend it.
Right.
But that's a hunting ethics, and as a biologist, I don't deal with ethics.
Right.
Our commissioners who make all the rules and decisions, they may decide it, but I, as a biologist, can only give recommendations based on the biology.
Specifically, I would very much say public land definitely would be a place that you wouldn't want to reap. We've done that before on the show. We have it on video. And I felt pretty safe because I was in a very wide open pasture up in, what county was that? That was up in, it was Allegheny County up in the mountains. So I felt very confident. It was private land and that sort of thing. But very exciting way to hunt. But I could see where it could be dangerous for people.
Yeah, and
even decoying for that matter.
It's one of those challenges, it's one of those, you should always identify your targets, especially because we don't wear orange during turkey season like we do deer. So, and I've had a classmate who was, shot by his own hunting buddy because they separated and he made a turkey sound and his buddy shot him. So it's very important. So we always identify our targets so we all come home safely at night.
Right. So fascinating. I mean, I'm glad to hear that there are going to be questions. So I'm going to say this up front. 75 questions is a lot of questions to do. Is that going to be online?
So we'll do a couple of email surveys to do it online, or then we'll do a mailing later because some people do like the pen to paper. These are really quick, rapid fire, like, did you hunt this year? Yes or no? Multiple choice answers. Are you strictly motivated? It's it's not going to be more than 15, 20 minutes to take you to complete that survey.
Right.
I know it's that balancing. How many questions can I ask and how many people are willing to answer those questions?
Before they start leaving the survey.
So it is that balancing thing.
Right.
But it is the one thing that I say it's their opportunity to tell us all about them, because knowing this and having the responses, it's really going to help guide us in making future decisions.
Right. So you're hearing it here first. Possibly people know about it, but I'm hearing it here first. Put it that way. What Hannah is saying is that a survey after the turkey season, a survey is going to come along that you can answer questions about how you hunt, about the experiences you've had. And that is nothing more than, it's not trying to take anything away. It's really trying to understand more, and it may even enhance some things about the turkey season and where we are.
Yeah, some of the questions are, how was your perception of things? Did you think turkey populations are going up? Why do you think that, or why did they decline? How many hunters can you tolerate being interrupted with? Are you hunting and you're just being overcrowded and people are constantly interfering with your hunts? So these things we really want to know, because that's one of our mission statements is to have a qualitative hunting opportunity. Well, now we got to define qualitative. So we're asking our hunters, what do you consider a good hunt?
Right. Quality. I like that. We've got quality birds here in North Carolina, and I'm very, very pleased and excited. So let's real quick, we're going to wrap this up, but we want to hear from you. I said the State of the Union, the state of the turkey in North Carolina and the future.
So far, the state of the turkey is we're steady, we're increasing maybe a little bit on our coast, we're holding good. Nothing is showing any wild changes sort of things in the future right now. But that's not to say that I am not constantly trying to predict the future looking 5 to 10 years down the line. I think the biggest limiting factor is North Carolina's population is growing. We're a desirable place to live, and I don't blame them. I moved here. It's one of the places I love. I was like, yes, North Carolina is one of the states I want to live in. So it's an awesome place. It's growing, but, we're destroying habitat as a result.
Right.
So that really puts an emphasis on having good quality habitat for them to keep up our turkey populations to be as high as they are. And I can't tell people what to do on their property to manage 4 turkeys.
Right.
As much as I would like to, people claim that's government overreach and stuff. So, but that's where we're really going to make a difference, is on people's private lands and managing for wildlife. And that means, whether it means stop mowing. That's the simplest thing. It saves you time and money. Don't mow from March through the end of October or end of September. Because that's when you got poults and nests and songbirds and everybody's out in those areas.
Right.
I know it makes you twitchy. It's ugly. It's weedy. Resist the temptation to mow. If that's one thing you do, please do that.
Right. I understand that, and I get that. And you heard it. You heard it straight from Biologist that truly cares.
I do.
I can tell that Hannah truly cares about our turkeys here and other game birds here in North Carolina.
Yes.
Which is great. And we'll have to have a conversation about quail in the future because of the state of the quail here. But as we can say for the turkey, the state of the turkey in North Carolina is strong.
Yes.
All right. I'd love to hear that. That's great. Well, I hope that you guys will Take what you've heard here today, apply it to whatever point you can apply it. But also that survey that's coming up, I think it's going to be very important. As well as I encourage you to make sure you check your birds in, because that is a big proponent of how we tell what's happening in our seasons.
Yes.
And you guys can make those science-based decisions that we talk about there. But it's fantastic. Thank you very much, Hannah, for coming in and speaking with us on this very important issue, especially in the springtime as we're getting ready to travel into the turkey season. I love it. It's one of my most favorite things to do in North Carolina. It used to be deer. I don't get me wrong. Don't get mad at me, guys. I love deer. But when it comes to a proactive hunt, to get in there and just, interact with the game that you're trying to take, there's nothing like turkey hunting.
Oh, they are a challenge. I mean, most of our hunters, those birds to feed them, but that's just what makes it so much more rewarding when we actually harvest a bird and you have that communication and that connection that you don't often have with your other species you hunt.
That's right. Do you hunt?
I actually don't hunt. I don't have the attention span to sit still long enough for turkeys. I'm much more of an upland game bird hunter. I like the walking and the moving and the chatting and the socializing. I just can't sit still more than like 10 seconds before I'm like, okay, I have to do something.
Got it. Well, there's nothing wrong with that. I can tell you.
So I'm not competition for everyone out in those woods for the turkey. I just let you all have all the fun, and please tell me all your hunting stories, because that's really what gets my juices flowing, is hearing your adventures out there.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, I guarantee you probably get cornered up at some of those meetings and guys are telling you all about their stories.
And I love it.
Well, that's awesome. Well, thank you again, Hannah, for coming out and being with us. That wraps up this edition of the Carolina All Out Fins, Fur, and Feathers podcast. Hey, don't forget, Season 9 is on its way and starting in July on the Pursuit channel and their streaming platform, Pursuit Up. And of course, you can see all the past and present episodes on our Carolina All Out YouTube channel. And make sure you follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Always got to say that. And go to CarolinaAllOut.com and sign up for our newsletter, as it comes out every week, and it has all sorts of great information. And we'll be talking about turkeys when turkey season's in, and white bass when we're catching white bass. So there's all sorts of cool stuff happening there. And don't forget, while you're at Carolina All Out, to take a look at our hats, t-shirts, and other cool merch. That's my shameless plug. I'm Chris Douglas signing off, and thanks for hanging out with us this week. We love you, and we want you to make our state your next adventure. When I was a kid growing up on the farm in little old Lee County, periodically and usually in the fall after selling tobacco, or in the early spring when it was time to start breaking ground, my family would make a trip to what seemed like a faraway place called AgriSupply. AgriSupply had everything we needed to keep the farm running, but it's so much more. From repairing trailers to parts for discs and plows, to livestock feed, to lawn and garden, to all that beautiful cast iron cookware. That tradition is still going on, but AgriSupply is now in 9 locations across the Southeast. If you haven't been to an AgriSupply store before, just go. You don't have to have a farm or a fleet of trucks to go in. The public is welcome. I guarantee you'll find something you need. And if you don't need it, I bet you'll want it. AgriSupply, it's what's inside.